Welcome to the debate. I'm your host Sana Maqbool with you at PTV World. In today's show, we will be talking about two very important topics. Our first topic is going to be regarding the recent talk regarding the remarks that have been given by PTI leader Shahbaz Gill, who has earlier been arrested on sedition charges based on his remarks on a private TV channel, ARY News, which has also been issued a show cause notice by PEMRA regarding airing of such content that incites public against state institutions. This has happened, and in the aftermath of that, we also know that the police has also talked about giving 2-day physical remand to the PTI leader Shahbaz Gill, and this has been granted by the courts as well. And we know that when we talk about this particular issue, this is something that has been spoken regarding the PTI and its leadership since a while now. Them talking against the state institutions, giving in remarks regarding controversies, also talking about how there is involvement by state institutions within the political domains of the country, something, of course, all of which has been repeatedly denied by the institutions and the external forces as well, that the PTI leadership keeps pointing towards. And now, of course, we have seen this escalate, and these statements coming in on a TV channel by a senior PTI leader, quite blatantly remarking against the state institutions, and of course, based on sedition charges, he has been arrested, which the PTI leadership is now accusing as abduction, and claiming that there has been no real remarks that have any controversial value or caused any embarrassment, something that Shahbaz Gill also spoke about in front of the media outside the courtroom. And we also know that other political leaders, including Fawad Chaudhry from the PTI, have talked about how this may be something that constitutes as a misunderstanding, and that the words may be inappropriate, but they don't make someone a traitor. So we're going to be talking a lot more about this particular issue. And then, of course, in the recent helicopter crash in Balochistan, where the army personnel and soldiers lost their lives and got martyred, we have seen in the aftermath of that there has been a lot of negative propaganda that has been going on social media regarding these soldiers, and of course the martyrdom of these soldiers as well, which also now puts into question who is behind it. What the Interior Minister Rana Sanawala is saying, that the PTI leader Shahbaz Gill's statements proves that it is indeed PTI who's against those campaigns as well. So we're going to be talking about this particular issue and bringing in state institutions, and of course making such irresponsible and hateful comments on television as well, and what is going to be now the future consequence of Shahbaz Gill and the PTI leadership as well. So that's going to be our first segment. Our second segment covers a story which has brought in at least some hope to the people of Pakistan, which is Rupee gaining strength against the dollar. And we have seen that after quite some time now, because all that it has been happening in the past was that it was plunging and has been on a constant decline since July 16th. And we have now seen that the currency has gained nearly rupees 2 in the interbank since Friday, and it has gained 57 paisa on Friday, followed by 53 paisa in this week's opening session as well. And of course, this points towards changing days. There have been statements coming in from financial and economic experts as well, that perhaps the downturn of the rupee is over, and since August has started, there is going to be a lot of change in what we're going to be seeing, and there's going to be substantial difference in the coming days. Whether or not that is going to actually happen, and what sort of changes and factors are involved in this current recovery as well, and how we're going to be able to sustain that in the future, is going to be our second segment of the show. For this and more, as usual, I've been joined in the studios by Farrukh Pitafi and Raja Faisal, and we've been joined online for our first segment, Brigadier Retired Mr. Haris Nawaz, who's a political analyst. Thank you very much, Brigadier Haris Nawaz, for joining us. And we will be joined very soon by Mr. Haider Wahid, who's a legal expert. So I'll start with you, Brigadier Haris. When we talk about, of course, the current situation, this entire narrative that we've been discussing coming in from the PTI and its leadership has been something quite factoring in the political statements of PTI's leadership since quite some time now, and early this year as well. We have seen such inclusions, such statements being made in the past as well, but what seems now coming in from Shahbaz Gill's statement seems to be perhaps a step ahead, seems to have crossed a certain line which it shouldn't have, bringing in the political institutions institutions into politics once again, and then of course also going a step further in terms of inciting the public and also the armed forces and its ranks within the institution as well to revolt against the leadership. So when we talk about these particular statements, particularly coming in from Shehbaz Gill at the moment, and then the entire context of PTI's narrative earlier as well, how serious do you think Shehbaz Gill's statements are? And in the aftermath of that, do you think that it is just and fair what happened and what needs to happen, as opposed to what the PTI is claiming should happen?
Sana, first of all, I must condemn. It is highly objectionable, unacceptable, and it should have never used such words against military and try to incite and try to create dissection between the armed forces. And particularly when he was reading a statement from a Bani Gala, and that means it had the approval of the party head. That's what it matters more, because he is chief of staff and he cannot speak anything without the approval of the party leader. Number two, which is very heartening, disturbing, is that you're talking about that the sepoys and up to brigadier are with us, they follow our ideology, then the senior officers' families are with us, then you're talking whatever, whenever we talk and we give a call, it should be right and you should follow it. These are the things which we have never heard in our lifetime. And then another disappointing thing is today when I was hearing the speech of Imran Khan, actually I thought he might condemn it and openly he should say yes, he has done a wrong thing, and we would have taken a very strong disciplinary action against my person, or I would have removed him and then taken certain action. Instead, he was trying to justify it. That is very disappointing. And then, of course, particularly these things, when you talk about like this to the people, what do you want? You see, the strength of the Pakistan army is the people of Pakistan. The bondage and the trust people have in Pakistan military services. See the plight of Iraq, talk about Libya, see about Syria. What happened? The army was weak and then they have no bondage with the people of their countries, and that's why they lost their country to the foreign elements. And here, because we have done professionally, Chief Army Staff is respected by all the army troops, and they followed blindly to him because he is professionally, and they know they obey order. They are a disciplined force. They will never do anything without the approval of the Chief Army Staff. What order he passed on to the corps commander, division commander, brigade commander, those are followed letter and spirit. And that's why you speak it. It's very, very sad to know how he has spoken. I think strict disciplinary action should be taken. I will go to an extent the Pakistan Army Secret Act should be applied on him. And then proper inquiry should be held. He should be given a chance. And then, of course, certain very serious action should be taken, and he should act as deterrent further. Otherwise, I know other political leaders have been talking about army, but not like this. So this should be taken very seriously. And I'm
right,
sure
absolutely. Let me also welcome in the debate Mr. Haider Waheed, who's a legal expert, and he's joined us on telephone line. Can you hear me, Mr. Waheed?
Yes, I can.
All right. When we talk about, of course, what has happened to Shehbaz Gill and the charges against him, we, of course, want to understand the kind of consequence it's going to now take place legally as well. Of course, there are a lot of things that we talk about that should happen, or we can condemn it, or hold somebody accountable for their statements and their actions. But legally, what is going to be the future course of action and the consequence for such charges? And especially keeping in mind the political scenario of the country, realistically, what sort of consequence are we expecting?
And Haider Waheed, I hope you being an expert on legal matters, let us ask you to also explain the entire sedition legal architecture that might be there and that is actually used at this moment, invoked at this moment.
Thank you for having me. So let me first clarify that not everything that is said about the armed forces is sedition. However, this is not criticizing interference in politics. Okay, if you were to criticize interference in politics, if you were to criticize encroachment, if you were to criticize lack of constitutionality in behavior, it would be different. Also, this is not criticism of the armed forces as if they were indulging in commercial activities or functions beyond their scope, like we have seen in some recent judgments. There has been commentary about how they, go a little bit ahead of their function and participate in commercial matters. So it's neither of the two. What we saw from Mr. Shahbaz Gill, even as much as he would like to say that he was generically talking about how illegal orders should not be followed, but if you see the context, it is very clear that he was enticing what can only be described as mutiny within the ranks. And that is a clear no-no. I mean, that is sedition, and that is a clear no-no. And I think the way he even couched it, the context, it is quite clear what he's trying to do. The mens rea, the criminal intent seems to be present. Of course, I don't want to act as judge or executioner already, and certainly he'll get his day in court. And right now he's on police remand, which means that he's under investigation. And then subject to that and subject to what the investigation report would be, he would then be applying for bail. And if he doesn't get bail, then he will obviously remain behind bars and be sent to judicial custody. If he does get bail, then obviously the bail, application will be argued, and the bail will either be confirmed or it will be denied. So this is basically, what's about to happen. Having said that, the criminal trial that we are talking about, the charge will be framed, and then subsequently the criminal trial will proceed. And I think it's a good thing that we were actually, the legal route has been taken vis-a-vis the criminal case. However, I would like to point out that it is quite unnecessary and actually takes away from the credence of the charges, which seem on the face of it to be quite real, that you have people in white shalwar kameez, or if you have, if you break the glass of cars to arrest someone, it seems like it's unnecessary and gives the wrong impression. Even if the reality is different, the impression that is created is that, you are showing some degree of high-handedness, as if there are ulterior reasons for the arrest, when in fact...
Right.
It is
Sorry to cut you, Hathas Sahab, just to qualify a very important nuance. Since this report broke, actually, the story broke, we have seen the CCTV footage where we don't see any person without uniform apprehending the man. We haven't seen the action of breaking the glass either. So a lot of it might be exaggeration on the part of the accused.
Well, all the better. And then I'm perfectly happy with the way this has happened, because you see, one of the reasons for the arrest. Now, just because an FIR is lodged does not mean someone ought to be arrested necessarily, and that too before investigation. But here the crime was really very clear on its face. It's what was said, and what was said repeatedly. And this is something that could have reoccurred. Now, I'm not personally in favor of arresting politicians or journalists for what they say. I think that there are other ways to curb what they say through FEMRA, through defamation laws, and criminality is something that, should be the last resort. But having said that, the content of what he said, I think there was very little room for maneuvering there, and I think that the FIR seems quite justified. And I think it is also quite clear that there was a real fear of repeat offense because of how Mr. Gill is, and that's another reason to have arrested him. So I think so far,
when we were earlier were talking to Brigadier Harris as well, he pointed out how the leadership is also involved, and certain actions or measures cannot be made, or any statements cannot be made without the approval of the leadership, and that there is consent or understanding involved in what the political party wants to put forward. How much of this will have a consequence on the PTI leadership as well, including Imran Khan, and whether or not these charges can have any legal consequence on the PTI chief as well?
Yeah, the fallouts, because there seems to be a context here. It was a friendly channel. He was given wide berth and he was reading from a paper and he said it was a statement. So that usually people are concluding that it actually came from the chairman.
Well, for one thing, yes, the channel gave him too much time. Now, it is one thing for someone to come on and say something and you don't know what's going on all of a sudden and you were taken by surprise. But when you let someone ramble on and on, as Mr. Gill was allowed to do by ARY, certainly aspersions are inevitable. Like I said, I don't want to act as judge, but on the face of it, it would appear that ARY was complicit. Now, whether the party leadership was complicit or not, the way we know our parties, our political parties to work, it is clear that something of this magnitude and substance could not have come without the approval of the party head. Now, I certainly don't know that as fact, but it is quite clear that the way our politics works and our parties work, there is no way that a chief of staff of a party head was going to go ahead and say something of this magnitude without having strategically not just gotten an approval, but perhaps even a direction or an instruction from the party head. So it's definitely worth investigating here. And it is quite likely that it may have come from the party head. But obviously that is still something that for investigation to reveal. There is enough out there to investigate, to find out if really this was upon instruction, or was this upon the higher instruction, and whether this will have any political impact. I think that, like I said, when you criticize the armed forces for interference in politics or overbearing involvement in commercial matters, it's one thing. But when you incite mutiny within the ranks, that certainly meets with more than just the disapproval of the nation. I think it is met with disgust and perhaps even I would say that a great offense. And I think that the people of Pakistan would want such things stopped. They would want such things prosecuted. I hope this happens legally, though, because it will take away from the credibility of the process if any of this is done ulterior to law. And I think it's a good thing that he's going to be put through a prosecution. And I think that whatever is the right decision at the end of this, I think it should happen. And we should encourage the prosecution to happen in accordance with law.
Yeah, Heather, if we obviously look at the social media, I mean, so many people, they are, using social media in a way which is a sort of a threat for the institutions as well. Should this be, made as a precedent for obviously coming times, that anyone who goes along these lines to obviously divide our institutions or create divides within our institutions, should this be a precedent for the coming years, and it should be set in a way that nobody dares to do anything in future?
Absolutely, and I'll tell you why. Because legally, Article 14, let's not even talk about the institution yet. So Article 14 talks about the dignity of man, which obviously includes woman. And it's an unqualified constitutional right that you cannot indignify a person, you cannot indignify them. That's an unqualified right. Freedom of speech, on the other hand, under Article 19 is a very qualified right. It's qualified by the restrictions that come with not using fighting words, that come with not using defamatory words, which come with the restriction of not inciting violence. So on balance, and constitutional rights have to be balanced, that yes, you have the freedom of speech, but it can't come with indignity, it can't come with inciting violence, it can't come with inciting a mutiny, it can't come with defamatory remarks. And so I think that once and for all of this should be put to rest. I am not a big fan of overzealous regulation, but certainly where constitutional rights and the dignity of institutions is concerned, I think that there should be a degree of regulation of social media. There's also a lot of misinformation that is spread on the social media that we need to be very, very careful about. So yes, I think if this can be a landmark case where certain parameters are set in accordance with the Constitution, then it probably will bode well for the future of the country.
Right. Thank you so much, Mr. Haider Waheed, for joining us and being a part of the debate. Let me come back to you, Brigadier Harris. Of course, there are legal matters and legal concerns, and they're going to play out as they do. But when we talk about the kind of impact it's going to have on the leadership, we, of course, have seen in recent times PTI gain even more popularity since the ouster of the previous Prime Minister. And there has been a certain narrative that has been floating around, even if it included talking about state institutions. Do you think that these particular remarks have had any sort of impact? Because, of course, whenever we talk about the followers or the voters and the way that their opinion is going to change, it comes down to probably nothing that is going to really have a major impact on a political party's priority. But do you think that this should account for something?
You see, the point is he's gone now a major party, and of course there are a lot of followers, and I think they have bought his narrative also. That I agree, but I'm sure who are having a basic sense and they are the patriot, they will understand that these things are not required, and it might affect his popularity in the country. But problem is at this time, do we need the stability? And if we need stability, that means we will have the economic stability, and then certain good welfare measures can be taken by the government. And if the way things are happening, election commission, then of course is owned disqualification, what is going to affect that the government of the Pakistan must realize and understand. The initiative is with the Prime Minister of Pakistan. Still feel there is a need of a national dialogue. Prime Minister should give a call at least. Whether he comes or doesn't come, that is a different thing. But he'll be very high in moral grounds. They sit, or some
Right.
constitutional appointments, like we have a President of Pakistan, you have a Chief Justice of Pakistan. They ask them to please sit down and find a solution, whatever is best suited for the country. But this politicians have to decide,
Right.
and we
Brigadier
have to
Saab,
diffuse the situation.
Brigadier Saab, that is well said, well put. But both you and I are cursed with a long memory. And just to point out that today what we are seeing is a culmination of a process that has been going on since 2013-14, when this particular channel was busy in dividing institutions as much as it could. If you remember, there was a judgment by PEMRA, and at that time there was a mutiny within PEMRA as well. And there seems to be this kind of alliance. So at this moment, the idea of inciting people to mutiny or to undermine unity of command within institutions, that is a very serious concern. But I don't think that it is part of the law per se. Is it not about time that we, since we are still fighting terrorism, we are confronted with India and other challenges, we should come up with the laws that take care of this matter as well?
Definitely, there is no doubt about it. You see, the point is, it is very serious. When you try to divide the rank and file, that is very, very seriously taken in the military. And then, because military is a disciplined arm, that's why there can't be any dissection, and they trust the Chief of Minister the way he is handling things so professionally. But it can create a lot of problems. And this has to be sorted out once for all. It must act as a deterrence. And you see, things have been happening and keep happening unless and until we punish someone. And then people are scared that no, now we can be accountable. And later on, there should be some law enacted, whether it is Speaker or there is some other laws, cybercrime, whereby nobody should talk against your institution, particularly armed forces. Have you ever heard anybody talking the word about military forces? Have you heard from India talking their forces inefficient, inexperienced, professionally untrained? But I have never seen publicly what happened with them in Ladakh, but nobody talked about them. It is only in
Exactly.
Pakistan we are seeing that the very people are talking about it. So because everybody, you let them free. Now is the time, take certain stern action, and everybody should know what is happening and what is the punishment, so that
And
next time
and just to
nobody
remind
does.
just to remind everybody who's watching, similar kind of issue actually cropped up during Imran Khan Saab's time as well, when TLP actually went on television and did something similar, and they were made an example of.
Yeah.
So shouldn't this time also we see some kind of example being made as well?
Definitely, and the point is, all pros and cons should be seen. What is going to have effect, but no compromise.
Yeah,
On
Absolutely.
talking
Brigadier
against
Harris,
armed
Brigadier
forces.
Harris, we both have obviously appeared on Indian channels, and we know that we have been highlighting EU Disinfo Lab when we know that for 15 consecutive years they have been, conspiring against Pakistan, and they were running, fake news outlets and fake news channels, and even on the social media presences. They had a humongous presence on social media just for one sake, and that was that they wanted to create divides within us. They wanted to, disrupt the discipline within our institution, that is Pakistan Army. Pakistan Army is one of the most disciplined institutions you can ever find, but they have always been trying to, disrupt that discipline just because of one reason that we know. All over media, even on the Western media, it has always been talked about. Even in the RT, it was talked about that the only reason nothing could be done in Pakistan of Syria type, of North Africa type, because they have a very disciplined Pakistan army. Here, don't you think that this time around, this kind of thing, it is a lot similar to EU Disinfo Lab? Whatever we had found out in there, it is quite similar to that?
Faisal, the important thing is what India, despite all their efforts, even EU Disinfo Lab, they failed to create this effect which are within our own files, and particularly within one of the political party and their toddlers and social media handlers, they are trying to do it. And this is very unfortunate. That is what I say, we must realize where we are heading for. Remember, if you don't have army in your own country, you will have the enemy army. That is a very simple principle. And how much army is doing sacrifices, how are young officers, senior officers getting shahadat, our troops are getting shahadat, and despite all this, see the plight of their families, how much they are affected, how they feel about it. Their young widows, senior widows. And with the way we are seeing on the social media, it is highly disappointing. See, troops, what should be feeling, that this is what our officers and troops are getting shahadat. We are doing a tremendous job for the country, and our people of Pakistan, politicians, are talking like this and having loose talk about us. So these are the afterwards we are having. This is what is creating, which is very, very serious. And that's what I am saying, that now immediately certain stern action has to be taken and certain law has to be enacted. Both things have to be done simultaneously, so that never ever anybody talks about armed forces of Pakistan. And because it seriously affects their morale, it affects their professional efficiency, and this is what is a design of the enemy, and this is part of fifth generation war. Inadvertently, we are not understanding but how much we are harming our own country. So now is the time, do it, close it one for all, and that is what is the answer and recipe.
Right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Brigadier Haris Nawaz, for joining us and being a part of the debate. But before we move on, let me also ask you, Faisal, when we talk about this particular issue with the negative propaganda, of course, going on, and particularly regarding the martyrs in the recent helicopter crash in Balochistan, it seemed to have crossed a certain line which it should never have crossed. There's, of course, the issue of Shahbaz Gill as well, but there's also an important factor in the entire issue when we talk about such irresponsible remarks, and that also disrespect our armed forces.
Exactly, it is, Sana. And if we talk about disrupting the ranks and trying to conspire against the institution, or if we talk about the helicopter crash, we very well know that the General Sarfraz, he was quite busy in them days trying to reach out to people of Balochistan because they needed help, and he was providing that help. And while he was providing that help, that unfortunate accident took place, which took his life, and may Allah bless him in Jannah. Here I wanted to make sure that I talk about it, that the motto of Pakistan Army is Iman, Taqwa and Jihad. And if we talk about the motto, they are going along with that motto. And there is another saying of Qaid-e-Azam, in which he says Iman, Ittihad, Tanzeem, faith, faith, unity and discipline. And if we talk about Pakistan Army, it obviously represents faith, discipline and the unity within the institution, and that unity is creating the impact all over Pakistan, and it is creating an impact that keeps us all united, right, and that keeps us all disciplined against all of the enemies. And I think anyone who dares to challenge that should be challenged himself.
Absolutely. Farrukh, you can also add in your comments to this, but I also want to ask you earlier regarding Shahbaz Gill and his remarks as well. Of course, there's a lot of talk about what should happen to him or what sort of an example should be set regarding him. But there's also the responsibility and accountability of media and media authorities as well, and what they choose to air and what sort of content needs to be put out on display as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The problem with Pakistan is that media is not just media. Media is big businesses basically, right? And because those big businesses have their interest, they actually wreak havoc with the national interest at times. And we have to actually keep that in check as well. But earlier, what Faisal was saying, the aspirational aspect, I don't think I will be able to top it, but I actually wanted to give you a long-winded answer regarding my own experience. I've been associated with PTV for roughly a decade now. In that, the most important thing that we have been focusing is war and terror. And in that war and terror, we have seen some of the saddest moments like Malala being shot, school children being actually killed, butchered, then women being attacked, then military institutions also being attacked. You know, the most important thing that I've been repeatedly saying is the centrality of institutions. Because guess what? When they took over Swat, what did they do? The first thing they did was do away with the legal system, with the administrative system of Pakistan, the constitution of Pakistan, and then they try to develop their own army or their own conduct, right? Their own police system. That means all these institutions are standing as a firewall between terrorists and us. And if we are sitting here comfortably talking and sipping coffee in a studio, that is because this is what our people have been doing, our institutions have been doing, they have been sacrificing. It is very important to know that in this country, if somebody tries to divide or undermine unity of command, they are actually trying to kill the country. Exactly. And when that kind of a thing happens, I think at this moment what Shahbaz Gill did actually is going to be such a shocker that it is going to revive the unity of command further. It is going to further cement it because everybody knows that this force, army, and then other institutions like our, for that matter, our institution of judiciary, they are the factors, they are the reasons why we are safe. So at this moment, it is important to remember that and keep on saying it. I think in coming days, what I'm seeing is that PTI, if it keeps on getting this kind of advice from people who are ill-informed or then perhaps misdirected, that kind of situation will harm nobody but them. So at this moment, it is important to remember that we have to stay united, unified, and that means if you want stability, such efforts will have to go away. Regarding media's accountability, I think that a couple of media groups at least, and I'm not talking about one side of the divide, both sides of the divide, because they are such big businesses, they keep on playing games with the national interest. And it is about time that that stops. If it doesn't stop, then the state will realize that if either they can live or then the state can exist. So I think that that will not be tolerated.
Absolutely, it shouldn't be. Let us go again now to our second segment, which is regarding the economic situation and the rupee gaining strength against the dollar. And I'll come back to you, Farrukh. And this is, of course, good news for the country, and it's a positive direction, perhaps, that the rupee is taking. But could you help us understand if this is a temporary, short-term recovery, or is it going to be a longer-term change that we're going to see, and will have a positive trajectory in the coming months as well?
Right. Thank you very much for this very nuanced question, Sana. It has many layers and they're all important. One, of course, it shows the recovery of the economy. Remember, the one of the basic indicators of the quality or state of your economy is your currency. Why? Because it is the estimate or approximation of the strength or weaknesses of your economy. But the problem with countries like Pakistan is that their economies are not documented well. So what happens is that then you actually end up talking about the foreign currency reserves, and how their existence and the amount of inflows versus the outflows, that actually determines how healthy your economy is.
Okay.
So in the past recent days, what we have done is we have checked bleeding of dollar, we have checked the imports that were unnecessary, and then the exports are being focused on. And then, of course, there is an international context as well. Oil prices are coming down. There are other dynamics as well. So right now, it seems that we are heading in the right direction because the fear of default is almost abating. I hope and I assume that that is not going to happen. In coming days, we will get many shots in the arm. Secondly, when you talk about policy direction, macroeconomic stabilization was a priority of this government. It has focused on deficit as well. The three deficits: trade deficit, then current account deficit, and fiscal deficit as well. When you do that, your economy starts to stabilize, and that is what is happening. Then the international direction. The only factor at this moment that frightens me is the international aspect. Because at this moment, while the crude is coming down, when we know that there is a possibility of the world avoiding a recession, you never know what exactly is going to happen tomorrow. So that can create or cause a shock. But at this moment, from where I'm sitting at, I think that rupee is going to appreciate to a stable level, and economy is going to get healthier, and we are not going to go towards any kind of default, inshallah.
Great, that's great news, and I'm so happy to hear that. And we're also happy, of course, to be able to see this positive trajectory of the economy as well. But Faisal, of course, what remains is again the importance of consensus regarding economic recovery, consensus regarding the policy matters, reforms, and the fundamental changes, which we don't seem very near to considering our political situation. Do you see that happening anytime soon?
Well, Sana, this is what I was trying to, I was thinking about coming towards it, that the political situation, of course, we need to, all of the political parties, they need to be aware that any of the statements against, the other parties or against the system, whichever it is right now, and their demands, they should be controlled demands. Why? Because they must understand that their political stance or their political statements, they create a sort of uncertainty, and that must end right now. Internally, we need to control ourselves. Externally, if we talk about, of course, there is a lot to do with the conflict, the Ukraine crisis right now. We are hoping that it will fix itself in coming days or months, and as soon as when it takes place, it would further strengthen the rupee against the dollar, number one, and number two, there is a trust that actually rupee is gaining, and that trust should be continuous trust, and somewhere along the line we need to play our role as well, because media, be it state media or be it privately owned media, they need to make sure that they remain consistent about highlighting the positive impact on Pakistan's economy right now or Pakistan's currency right now, so that the trust deficit is not created, and that trust remains for the buyers and for the sellers and for the traders and for the people who are investing in Pakistan in shape of FDIs or in shape of the local investors as well. So to me, I think that trust should be built and trust should maintain itself, and we shouldn't head towards any uncertainty.
Yeah, earlier we were talking about media accountability. So this idea that media should only be portraying good news about economy, I'm sorry, I don't agree with that. Media should be reporting the truth, and I think that at this moment the truth is that economy is improving, right?
Exactly.
But if you actually turn off those early warning systems in the media about the state of economy, perhaps we can cycle back into a regressive state. But having said that, earlier you asked the question, Sana, about the importance of consensus, right?
Yes.
Let me say something funny and sad.
Okay.
They say that if you are not on the table, you are probably
On the
on the menu, right? At this moment, what do you call consensus, right? There's only one party which is left out. All parties are part of the
Technically,
system,
there is
and they are supporting the same agenda, and all institutions seem to be actually working with them as well. So the consensus is there. One
That's a fair
party has chosen to fall out of the system, and sadly, because it is not any longer part on the table, it is becoming a part of the menu. Other parties are going to just start, chomping off of it. At this moment, while we are talking in Punjab, there seems to be some kind of move for PML and PMLQ to actually influence the PTI, MPs and take them over, because PTI refused to allow any minister to from PMLQ to be part of the cabinet. That is the state of affairs. At this moment, PTI needs to actually take a long and hard look at where it is heading at. And if it doesn't, it is going to go for total disaster. But regarding economy, I think everyone is united. And the country is going in the right direction.
Yeah, Farrukh, if you allow me.
Very quickly, Faisal, we have to move on.
If you allow me, talking about consensus, there is one party. Can we say that in the larger interest of Pakistan and the nation, there should be a red line drawn, and
by whom?
By whom? By whom? By the institution. And if we talk about the institution,
what institution in economy?
In institution,
State Bank of Pakistan.
No. Not State Bank of Pakistan. I would obviously, seek help of the judiciary. They should draw a line for the opposition party as well.
Hang on.
This is the draw. This is the.
All right.
This is
I'm sorry, Sana, I'm doing this, but here's the point. The judiciary is very important institution. I respect that, but with due respect, economy is not actually the purview. Purview it is of the executive, right? And it is a policy. You cannot always go to institutions which are not elected and seek help. Eventually, what you have to do is you have to build consensus through political means. If any party doesn't partake that, it is making itself irrelevant. And that's why I keep on saying, PTI, wake up, you are headed in the wrong direction.
Right. But of course, coming back to the economic situation, we're of course happy that the rupee is recovering against the dollar. But unfortunately, with this positive news, we also have some tragic news that we want to share. Unfortunately, 2 of our colleagues have passed away in the recent times. We have lost Mr. Saud Zubair, who was a news editor at PTV World. And we've also lost previous in-charge PTV World and Director News and Current Affairs, Ms. Rafat Nazir. Both of these colleagues were of course people that I have also closely worked with, so has Farrukh, and of course we've spent a lot of time here at PTV World with them, and we really hope that they rest in peace, and of course our heart also goes out to the bereaved families, and may Allah grant them the courage to go through this loss and ease their suffering and pain. We've also prepared a package in honor of Ms. Rafat Nazir, so let's take a look at that.
In Pakistan, Kalimian lost some of the veterans who helped in making PTV a national institution. Legendary newsmaker and one of the most prominent journalists in news media, Madam Rafat Nazir was one of those professionals. She joined PTV News in 1983. On 10th August 2022, Madam Rafat Nazir left us for her heavenly abode. She had been battling against cancer for last few years. Owing to breathing difficulty, Rafat Nazir was admitted to a nearby hospital where she breathed her last. Madam Rafat Nazir had served as the Director News and Current Affairs in PTV News. She had headed PTV World as an in charge of the channel. Indeed, she was part of the pioneering team who launched Pakistan's only English channel, PTV World. She started her career from PTV Center, Karachi. Then she moved to Islamabad. She had been excellent field reporter who covered events both locally and internationally from various countries. She performed her excellent role in production, reporting and editing in a remarkable way. She has also worked as Prime Minister's beat reporter for many years. She always focused on issues of social welfare, common man and always fought for the promotion and protection of national interests and worked for the progress of the nation while discharging her professional responsibilities. Madam Rafat Nazir was an adept professional and a courteous human being who will always be remembered for her sterling qualities of heart and mind. Her colleagues are really torn apart to hear her sudden demise. It is appointed for man to die once, and after this judgment. But this we pray, that mercy reigns over judgment, wishing you a blissful rest in eternity, Madam Rafat Nazir. We may not understand why you left this earth so soon, but little by little we begin to remember not just that you died, but that you lived, and that your life gave us memories too beautiful to forget. PTV mourns the death of Madam Rafat Nazir and prays for her departed soul. Indeed, we belong to Allah, and Him we shall return. Fahad Ahmed Missan, PTV World, Islamabad.